Welcome friends to another r/entitled parents video. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And our first story of the day is by Chungus. Close your airplane window, you're blinding my angel. This story happened yesterday, and it wasn't exactly my first Karen encounter. I've had a few past encounters, but this one definitely takes the cake for my funniest one. I work at an airline and need to regularly take business trips from Houston to Chicago. I usually go on these flights once a week at least. Here's what happened. I had just boarded my flight and plugged my earbuds in as I listened to my favorite podcast. Keep in mind it's about 11 a.m. Central Time. I was minding my own business when a middle-aged blonde woman approached me, the entitled mother of the story, looking unhappy. I say, "Hello ma'am, can I help you?" She says, "Yes, please close your window." I, confused, say why. She says, "Your window's way too bright and it's disturbing my angel who's napping." Almost everyone else has their window open, and her angel is playing games on his Nintendo Switch. I say, "Ma'am, your child's clearly awake." I plug my earbuds back in. She didn't like this one bit. She says, "Excuse me," yanking the earbuds out of my ears. "Close your window or I'll call the flight attendants." Insert the flight attendant who I'll be calling nice employee for now. The nice employee says, "Is there a problem?" The entitled mother says, "Yes, this man is disturbing my sleeping son by having his window open." The nice employee glances at the kid who's still playing games and says, "Ma'am, your kid's awake and playing games. Please go back to your seat or I'll have you escorted off when we land." The entitled mother is clearly angry but complies. She kept shooting dirty looks at me the entire flight, but luckily I got off not too long after and was glad I never saw her again. As often as I see the trope where you get on a flight and all of a sudden you're sitting right next to a cranky crying baby or a Karen that keeps yelling at you, or maybe the kid behind you keeps kicking on the seat. Have you ever personally had a nightmare flight like that? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by I'm a 314 Lot. Entitled father wants to bend airport security rules, gets detained by police. So if you can't tell from my username, I'm a pilot. Specifically, my job is to fly an air ambulance airplane. Pilot is PC-12 for those who are curious. And 90% of the time, it's an awesome job. The other 10% is the type of stuff you expect that brings the job down, such as hours, paperwork, new guidelines, and the sad stuff that goes with being in a field related to medicine. Last week, however, was an experience that made me wonder how some people are even able to remotely function in society. I was at an airport in a smaller city that handles both small airline flights as well as private flying such as flight training and corporate flights. I'm waiting in the aircraft while the flight nurses are at the hospital getting the patient ready for the trip. Part of my duties is making sure the plane's cooled down and ready to go the moment that the ambulance arrives with the patient. As such, I'm out walking around the plane doing checks and just visiting with pilots and the support personnel on the ramp. While out there, this guy pulls up to the chain link fence of the airport about 80 feet away and gets out of his car with his son, who appears to be about 10 or so. He starts yelling at us to come over. Okay, people in aviation are actually pretty friendly for the most part, and the kid hanging on the airport fence is something many of us were in our younger days. Myself and a pilot of a jet park nearby and walk over to the guy and his kid. Big mistake. The guy starts out by saying he was former military and wanted to fly, but his eyes are bad so he went door gunner in a helicopter. He's saying things and making claims that have my BS flag flying at full staff. Oh well, whatever, we remain cordial and ask the son if he's interested in flying. He's shy but says he is and he wants to fly fighter jets. The other pilot turned out to be a retired A-10 Pilot 1, so he starts chatting the kid up. The father therefore is talking to me. The entitled father says, "So what do you fly?" I say, "That air ambulance pilot is right there." He says, "Cool, how fast does that go?" I say, "Average speed's around 250 to 275. He says, "Would you be able to give us a ride? We'll pay for gas." I say, "Sorry, company policy says I can't, plus I'm waiting on a patient." He says, "Can the other guy take us?" The other pilot says, "No, my jet's privately owned and we only fly the owner and his family." The entitled father says, "That is BS. Y'all have seats, just take us for a quick flight. My kid wants to be a pilot." The other pilot says, "Sorry, we can't. Plus, you have to go through TSA to come onto the ramp, and they'll want you to have a pass." He says, "I'm not leaving until one of you gives us a ride." At this point, the other pilot and I walk away back to our planes. This guy gets in his car and drives over to the vehicle access gate, remotely manned from inside the building, and basically parks his car in front of it. A TSA agent walks out and tells the guy to leave. entitled father just locks the door and rolls up his windows. About 5 minutes into this, I get the text that the ambulance has left the hospital and is on the way. Soon after, a police car pulls in behind the guy and starts to question him. Because of all this, the ambulance had to be led through another gate and then escorted across the airport. I was told that the threat of arrest was enough to get compliance, but the guy still got a trespassing notice, as well as a citation for impeding an emergency vehicle. Wish the kid all the best. With a father like that, he'll have a hard road. If the kid actually is interested in being a pilot, I just hope that the father doesn't take an experience like this and somehow let it ruin that for them, be like, oh, you don't want to be like a pilot like those jerks. And then as always for kids with parents like these, I just hope they don't rot their brain with growing up to just be another entitled adult. Our next story is by Gabby Baby. Entitled brat jumped on my back because I'm fat and it wouldn't hurt me. So let's start with this, that I'm overweight. It was bothering me all the time when I was a kid, but now I learned to deal with it. I just started loving myself and being happy because who I am. I'm not that kind of person who's just lazy and does nothing. I live in the countryside. I don't have animals like cows or pigs. Every day I have some physical work to do, so I keep on moving. Because I'm bigger, I have more strength, so harder work isn't a problem that much. For several months, my bones started to hurt. It isn't the pain like it's going to be for a few seconds. Sometimes it's long minutes of severe pain that sometimes takes away the feeling in my arm or leg. I told this to my dad, but he's always telling me that I'm still growing and that it's because of that. My mom promised me that she'll take me to an orthopedist once the pandemic comes to an end. Today, I've decided that I'm going to sunbathe in my backyard. Before that, my dad told me that some of his friends and their kids will come, so I didn't mind as long as they don't disturb me. I took my blanket and lay down on my belly. I put my earphones in my ears and just relaxed while listening to criminal stories. Everything was fine till I felt like someone jumped on my back. I took off my earphones. I thought that my dog jumped on my back. But then I saw my dad's friends' kids. I didn't know these people or their kids, and one of them was on my back. I said, "What are you doing? It hurts. Get off." I pushed the kid off my back. His feet land down on my spine, so that hurt even more. Entitled Kid 1, the one who jumped on me, said, "I wanted to scare you." I said, "That's not how you scare people. Are you stupid? Did you lose your mind?" And before people say that I shouldn't scream at them, they were not younger than 12 or 13. Entitled Kid 2 says, "We just wanted some fun. Your dad said it's fine." I slowly got up from my blanket and without a word, I went to my dad and his friends who were sitting on the terrace. It was visible I was upset. Mom says, "OP, what's wrong?" Dad says, "What happened? Why were you screaming?" I say, "Dad, did you allow them to jump on me?" He says, "What? No, I just told them that you were in the backyard and to not disturb you." Entitled Mom says, "I told them to come and get you. What's the big deal?" I, now so angry that I could feel I'm turning red, said, "One of them jumped on my spine. That's what's the big deal." Husband of Entitled Mother said, "Who did that?" I pointed to Entitled Kid 1. The husband says, "Why would you do that and why would you lie about it?" The entitled kid says, "I don't know, I wanted to have some fun." The husband says, "Fun? How are you behaving like this? Don't you see that it hurt her?" The entitled mother says, "Don't scream at them. She could barely feel anything." I said, "I felt everything. He landed on my darn spine." I started crying because of the pain. The entitled mother laughed. She said, "No, you don't. You're just overreacting. You're fat enough not to feel it." My mom grabbed me and led me to the door of our house. When we went to the house, my dad was quietly but upset, telling the parents to leave his house and to never contact me or any member of our family. Entitled mother was saying over and over to not make a big scene of this, but her husband cut her off and told her to go to the car with the kids. He apologized and drove off. After that, my dad came to my room and started apologizing to me. I said that it wasn't his fault, but I don't want to see these people ever again. I'm laying in my bed now, got some really strong pills to kill the pain in writing this. Anti-stress parenting scares me. What if in the future some of these kids kill someone for fun? I don't think allowing an entitled mother like this to ruin the idea of anti-stress parenting is a good idea. I would think the idea behind anti-stress parenting is to have as minimal stress involved as often as possible when it's reasonable. But if your kids are going around jumping on people, you very obviously need to address that and have some kind of discipline in place. Anti-stress parenting doesn't equate to, no, it's okay, everything's fine. It's not like these kids are gonna grow up to have driving lessons and they're starting to run over people left and right and the mom's like, yeah, no, it's okay, everything's fine. You'll improve. Who cares if you ran over Sally? I didn't even like her that much. This next story is by Cheryl Bombshell. Entitled Mother stares at me and tries to break my fence and cherry tree, then threatens me and my mother. My mother and I have lived in the same house since I was born, and our first neighbors are our relatives. My mother's aunt, entitled Mother, male cousin, and female cousin. Entitled Mother is an old witch no one ever liked. She tried doing witchcraft on people. Entitled Idiot, male cousin, is a 40-something guy who went to prison already for fights, drug possession, and beating up his girlfriend. Entitled Witch, female cousin, is a 40-something witch who's never had a boyfriend, still lives with Entitled Mother in an old rusty house, and tries to make everybody else miserable because that's the way she is. Needless to say, they've always acted that way. My mother had been getting threats from them since she was a child, living in her childhood home in the same garden, just a different house. They put razors under her pillow, and one of them jumped the fence once when my uncle was a baby and tried to stab him. That's just a quick review of the situation, but there's much more to the story. Yesterday, I was sitting in my garden, drinking a coffee, and I noticed Entitled Mother was staring at me through the branches of my cherry tree, which is next to the fence but entirely on our property, while picking cherries from the tree. It looked like that famous pic of Jeff the Killer, that creepy expression staring me right in the eyes. I asked her what the freak she was doing, and she started yelling at me that it was her property and she'll do what she likes with it, while also calling me names and threatening me. When I told her it wasn't hers and to freak off, she started breaking the branches and parts of the fence. Then my mom came out and started to argue with her, to which Entitled Mother threatened her too and said she'll cut our electricity and water, which she legally can't do but would anyways. Then she said that male cousin would stab us both and she would kill us. My uncle somehow stopped the fight and got them both to go inside, and I filmed the whole thing where she threatened us. After a few hours, Entitled Witch came home, and when Entitled Mother told her about the ordeal, she started yelling the same threats, that she'll murder us, she'll tell male cousin and he'd stab us to death, etc. It's been going on for 2 days, and I have most of it on tape. We're planning to sue, and if anyone's interested, I'll update the post when I get any new info. I just needed to get the story off my chest. If nothing at least, we'll get the cops to come so they'll have a good scare. I definitely think at the very least you should call the cops. The moment any of them says anything about stabbing, about threats, that's not even like non-emergency line, that's straight up 911. You need to get somebody out there to talk to these people. You need to get a restraining order filed like yesterday. I know it's their residence and it's close proximity, so you can't just have like a 500-meter restraining order, but you can definitely have like a no contact or at least no harassment form of restraining order. And then at that point, if they decide to continue to act up in any way, that's a fast way to accessorize with a pair of handcuffs. And our final story of the day is by Warrior White. Entitled Mother throws tantrum because I won't give her an employee's phone number. This happened many years ago when I was manager at a popular sandwich shop. Because it was considered a starter job, a lot of our employees were high school-age students. Most were great employees. Students looking to get some work experience or money before going off to college. A few of them were not so great. One such worker was a kid I'm going to call M. M was a problem from day one. He clearly didn't like working. If you told him to do something, he would find any excuse not to do it or avoid it altogether. He would talk smack to customers, and we would often just put him on kitchen duty, which he was terrible at. He constantly showed up late, or didn't show up at all. He lasted about a month before I finally had to let him go. The story: this happened about 6 months after M stopped working for us. It was a typical weekday. I was working alone. It was a very slow shop, and had a line of about 3 people. Enter the Entitled Mother. Entitled Mother marched straight up to the till, bypassing the line and said, "I need to speak to the manager." I address her from the other end of the counter where I'm still making a sub for the current customer. "I'm the manager, ma'am. I'm happy to help you in a second if you don't mind waiting." She says, "This is an emergency. I need help now." I excuse myself from the current customer and approach her and say, "What's wrong, ma'am?" She says, "Do you have an employee named M working here?" I say, "We used to. He's no longer with us." She says, "I need his phone number right now." Note, due to company policy at work, we're not allowed to give away any personal or private information of our employees to non-family members, excepting for true emergencies. I say, "Are you family?" She says, "No." I say, "Why do you need it? What kind of emergency is it?" Entitled Mother goes on to a long, rapid story about how her son and M are best friends. She says that M's a bad influence. He's gotten her son in trouble in the past and she tries to keep them apart. Apparently, her son didn't come back from school yesterday. He's still missing and not answering his phone. She says she's sure he's with M getting into trouble again. She wants M's phone number to call and see if her son's with him. I politely tell her that I'm sure this is a very frustrating experience, but due to company policy, I can't give away an employee's private information. I recommend calling the local police department and seeing if they can help. I offer to call them with her. I would have happily have given M's number to a police officer if they deemed it necessary. Entitled Mother throws a huge fit. "I don't want to call the police. M's gotten my son arrested before. If I call the police, they'll just arrest him when they find him. I just want to call M to see if my son's with him and to make him tell my son to come home." I apologize, as that's the best thing I can think of. She says, "Get me your manager." I say, "I am the manager, ma'am." She says, "Get me the owner then." I say he's on vacation on the other side of the world. I'm not to call him unless it's an emergency. She says, "This is an emergency." I say, "Not by his standards. How about I take your phone number and text it to him? He can call you when he wakes up." Entitled Mother starts a string of profanity, but scribbled her number down on a napkin. While I'm texting it to my boss, she begins loudly whining to the other customers who have been patiently waiting this whole time. "I can't believe they won't give me his phone number. This is an emergency. My son is missing. Last time he went out with M, they got caught graffitiing a car and were arrested. I know that kid is with my son. Who knows what trouble he's getting him into? Can you believe she won't give me his number?" I say, "I've texted my boss your number and given him an update on the situation. If he gives me permission to pass on M's number, may I text it to you?" She says, "Why can't you just give it to me now?" I say, "As I said, we're not allowed to give out employees." She cuts me off. "He's not an employee. You said it yourself. He hasn't been with you for a while." I say, "We simply do not give out private information of our employees, current or former." Entitled Mother starts another tantrum. This time, she actually pushes our cookie display onto the ground. She throws bags of potato chips at me while demanding the phone number. She runs up to the other customers in line and starts asking them to help get the phone number from me. She starts pleading with them for sympathy. I decided this had gone too far and start calling the police. Entitled Mother hears me on the phone with the police and says, "Oh yeah? Well, I'm gonna call the police on you." Starts fake dialing her phone. "Hello, police? Yes, my son's been kidnapped. I'm at a store and this woman won't give me the phone number of his kidnapper." She proceeds to walk out and away from the store while placing this phone call. I go back to helping my customers. I apologize profusely to them. Most of them thought it was pretty funny. A very confused police officer showed up about 5 minutes later. I told him the story and gave him her phone number and her photo from our security camera. Another customer told the officer which direction she'd walked away. He wrote down the information and said he'd follow up if he needed to contact them. My boss responded around midnight, and I updated him on what had happened. He was glad I hadn't given out any personal information. He was sure she was a crazy lady. I never did hear back from that lady or the officer, but it sure made for an interesting experience. In this experience, I actually do understand where she's coming from. As far as the whole needing to contact M because her son's probably with them, and then also the fact that calling the police is a bad idea because they might get implicated in something. But at the same time, they need to understand that sometimes people's hands are tied as to what they can and can't do. And then they went full Karen with the whole, "Well, I'm calling the police on you." Hello? My kid's been kidnapped. It's like, that's what OP was asking you to do already. So you're clearly not actually doing it. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.